All right, we are live recording. So, hope you guys are having a great day. So, today we are going to talk a little bit about effort and results and having a very real conversation with you guys regarding what you should expect, what you should not expect. And yeah, this is some tough love in this podcast. So I hope you're ready for it, and hope you need it. You know, if you're somebody who feels like you need a little bit of a kick in the ass, maybe, or some motivation, inspiration, or some real talk, this one's probably going to be for you. So the big thing in this conversation that I want to go over, from having some conversations with clients and other people, even in the DMs and everything, is that effort does not equal results. And just because you're putting effort into something does not mean that you should expect a certain result. So for example, if you started your weight loss journey, your fat loss journey, and you're doing some things, making some changes, and they feel really hard, that does not entitle you to necessarily getting the results that you want. And there's two big reasons why. The one might be a little bit obvious, but maybe not. One is that you might just be doing the wrong things. You might be working hard. You might be doing something that feels uncomfortable, that feels challenging, that's pushing you, but it might not be the right thing you need to be doing. You know, if I were to decide that I'm going to cut out all carbs in order to lose body fat, or if I decided I'm going to cut out artificial sweeteners, if I'm somebody who drinks some kind of diet soda every day, which, just to comment on this, artificial sweeteners are perfectly fine. So please include them in your diet if you do enjoy them. But let's say if I wanted to cut those out, those things aren't necessarily what I need to be doing to lose body fat, and they don't directly move the needle forward with body fat. And the artificial sweetener one probably actually hurts your chances of losing body fat when we look at the actual research. But you could be doing the wrong things. Like, think about if you were driving your car and there was some noise going on when you're driving down the road, and things are rattling and you're starting to get a little bit nervous. Things feel a little bit creaky when you turn or when you brake or whatever. So you're like, you know what? I'm going to fix this car. And you're going to try to fix it on your own because you're trying to save money and you don't want to take it to the shop. So you go home, you start tearing apart the car. You're like, or first, actually, before you start tearing it up, you go on YouTube and start researching, okay, what this noise could possibly be. And you find some clues as to, okay, it's probably this. And I'm not even going to attempt to name any car parts or anything because I'm terrible with cars. But you research and you find some clues. Okay, you think it's this. So you start taking apart the car and you start taking things out and rearranging things, cleaning things, whatever. And then turns out, like, the issue with the car was maybe something at the very rear of the car, and you were working completely on the front end of the car. And the thing that was wrong with it wasn't anywhere close to like what you were actually working on. Now, all of that effort or that time spent of researching all of that, working on the front end of the car, taking things apart, I'm assuming likely was hard. It probably was challenging. It probably was hard work. Probably, you worked up a sweat. It was effort, right? But it wasn't effort into the right area or in the right spot, and you were doing it wrong. And like, have you ever too, studied for an exam, and the exam was over, 3 chapters, and you put so much effort into studying chapter 1, and then you got to the test and there were like 2 questions on chapter 1 and all the other questions were on chapter 2 and 3. Now, it doesn't negate the fact that studying for chapter 1 like that was, took effort. It was hard, but it didn't necessarily get you the result you wanted because you were maybe studying the wrong chapter, or maybe the professor told you the exam was just going to be on chapters 2 and 3 and you misheard them and thought it was going to be on chapter 1 too. So you studied something that you didn't actually have to. And so many people fall into this because I have so many conversations with you all, and you guys are cutting out carbs. You are cutting out this, cutting out that. You're skipping breakfast. You're doing hours of cardio. You're doing all this intense HIIT training where you're jumping up and down, short rest periods. You're running multiple miles throughout the week and all this stuff, and you're not seeing the results that you want, but it's because you're just not doing the right things. So effort not only has to be there to eventually get results, but it also has to be put into the right things, into the right spot. And if not, then you aren't going to see the results you want if you're putting effort into the wrong task that you need to be doing. And this is where like having a coach is so helpful, because like you have all these things that you think you need to be doing, this, whereas having a coach can help to just narrow that focus down to where, okay, here are the 3, maybe 4 things, but probably just 3 big things we need to focus on. Place all of your effort into these 3 things. And if you do that, you're going to see results, and then you do. And it just helps to harness and focus those results and aim them in the direction that they need to be to see results. So that's number 1, is that effort doesn't equal results, because you could just be putting an effort into the wrong things. Number 2 reason, and this is one that probably a lot of people don't think about, which is you might be doing like focusing on the right things, but you just might not be meeting the threshold yet to see results. And what I mean by this threshold is, think about like if you have an ice cube and you're trying to melt it, and the temperature in the freezer is 0 degrees right now, and every hour or every 10 minutes, you have to like crank this lever, and then it increases the temperature in the freezer by 1 degree. And so you wait 10 minutes, crank it, wait another 10 minutes, crank it. And you go from 0 to 30 degrees or 32 degrees, whatever the freezing point is. Honestly, I don't even remember at this point. It's been so long. But nothing happens, because it's still below freezing. But it doesn't negate the fact that all of those cranks, those like 30 or 32 cranks up to get up to that temperature, it doesn't negate that those cranks like were worth it and that they were valuable. They still were valuable and worth it, but they just didn't meet the threshold yet to see the quote unquote results of watching that ice actually melt. And then it's once you get past that, 33rd crank and start to get into the 40s, where you actively start to see that ice melt, and you're like, okay, results are coming now. But if it wasn't for those previous 30 cranks, you never would have gotten to that point. So those other 30 cranks like were valuable and useful and required and necessary, but they didn't necessarily produce the result that you were aiming for, because you haven't met that threshold yet. Another example, kind of going back to the passing the exam example, is you might have this really hard class. My hardest class in college was definitely anatomy and physiology. There was a course that I took that was like in the summer, that was 6 weeks long, where they crammed everything into 6 weeks. It was a really high level course, and it was the most difficult class I've ever taken, ever. And like, let's say you're studying for an exam for a course like that, and there are these practice exams that you can take, and you need a, let's say, 65% or let's say 70% on the exam to pass. And you take these practice exams and you study for a little bit, and the first one, you get 10%, way low. Didn't pass at all, not even close. So you study for another few days, and you take another one, and then you get 20% on that one. Okay, there's some improvement. You do some more studying, take another exam, and then you get to 45%, and then you do some more studying, and then maybe after the 4th or 5th round of studying and taking practice exams, after maybe a couple weeks, you finally end up hitting 75% on this practice exam. Now, you only achieve the result of actually passing the exam from that last attempt of studying and that last practice exam that you took. But all of the previous attempts of studying in those practice exams built the skills up, built the knowledge up for you to actually like pass that one time. And the same thing goes for if you are somebody especially who, you have zero knowledge on nutrition almost, or maybe just know generally how to eat healthy, but you have zero knowledge of or experience of tracking your food, how to actually like structure your day to hit a proper calorie intake and be consistent with that. You struggle with the same thing with protein, and you don't know how to include 8 to 10,000 steps into your day, and you're maybe just getting started with and just new to lifting and doing that a couple times a week. All these things are so new. You're in that beginning stage of that first round of studying where maybe you're getting a 10% on your practice exam, quote unquote, every week. But that studying is still hard. Like implementing your steps, even if you're only hitting them 2 or 3 days a week, like that still feels hard to you because it's not what you're used to. But it doesn't meet the threshold of consistency to actually start seeing results yet. But it's still hard and it's still necessary and you still have to go through it, but you can't expect an immediate result from that because the threshold or the consistency that you need to see the results isn't there yet. Same thing with the workouts. Maybe you've been implementing workouts trying to aim for, let's say, 3 times a week, and you've been getting them twice a week sometimes once a week, here and there. And while those workouts have been hard and difficult to get into mentally and physically, and it's not for nothing because you're building the skill of the workouts, you're building the habit of working out, you're building the consistency, you're working towards that. So all of that is still important, but maybe in order to consistently get the results you want, you have to be consistently, I'm using the word consistency a lot, consistently working out 3 times a week. That's like the threshold you need to see the results you want. But you're just not there yet. You're building up to it. Same thing with the calories and the protein and tracking your food and all of that. Like all of that might be completely new to you, and it might feel like a lot of mental effort and mental strain and practical effort of finding, okay, now I have to buy these new things from the grocery store that I don't normally buy. Where are they in the grocery store? I can't find them. Now I'm getting frustrated with this. Or maybe, you're starting to prep your food a little bit more. Now you feel like you have to kind of navigate, okay, like Sunday afternoons, I normally do this, but now I have to prep some chicken in bulk for this. So when am I going to do the laundry or when am I going to do this? Like all these things to navigate, and they're hard. And I get that. But until you meet the consistency threshold of doing the right things, 6 days out of the week, at minimum 5 days out of the week, 85% of the time, 90% of the time, until you meet that threshold of consistency, it might feel really hard making these changes in your life, but you might not actually see the physical results start to pay off yet. So you have to be willing to just continue to just work, continue to do the things that you know you need to do, check off those right boxes, and build up and train yourself up to consistency. Like consistency is a skill, just like riding your bike is a skill. Consistency, like building that habit, is a habit that you have to build, just like when you were a little kid and you had to build the habit of remembering to brush your teeth every single day. Like these things take some time, which is why like I love the way I take my clients through their phases with their priming phase and their fat loss, because the priming phase is geared towards like not only one having the physiological benefit of building their metabolism up kind of to as much as we can get it to, but also that priming phase really helps to like build that level of consistency that we need in order to meet that threshold of being consistent, to where when we go into a fat loss phase, boom, fat loss starts to happen like right away. But until you build up that consistency and meet that threshold with these variables, you can't expect any results. Like I can, my goal might be to finish a mile in under 6 minutes, let's say. And finishing a mile in under 7 minutes might feel hard for me still. But just because it feels hard doesn't necessarily meet that threshold of finishing in under 6 minutes. So hard does not always equal results, because you might be doing the wrong things, but you also might be doing the right things, and they might feel hard, but you might not be doing them consistently enough to meet that threshold to see results. So hopefully this helped. And the part of this is to encourage you. And if you are doing the right things and it does feel hard, keep going, because eventually if you continue to go and you don't give up and you don't quit and you build that consistency up and you're hitting these targets 5 at least, if not 6 or 7 days out of the week, and you really build it into your lifestyle and make it a habit and it becomes a part of who you are, then your results will really take off. So, struggling for a month, 2 months of doing these hard things, but maybe not seeing much of a payoff, is well worth it if you stick with it. And after 2 months, you finally meet that level, that threshold of consistency, and then you've taken time to build up to it. So now you're able to maintain that level of consistency for weeks, months, years, and achieve, 5, 10 plus years of results going forward after that. It's well worth that like growing pain period of the first 4 to 8 weeks of getting consistent with that enough to meet that threshold. So hopefully this was helpful and kind of encouraging. and a little bit of a wake-up call that if you are getting frustrated because things feel hard, but you're not seeing results, check your consistency and be honest with yourself there. And if you don't have a method to checking your consistency, have a calendar and check off how many days out of the past 7 did I hit my calorie range? How many days out of the past 7 did I hit my protein range? How many days out of the past 7 did I hit my step goal? How many workouts out of the past 7 that I planned did I hit? Like, check off those boxes and see what your percentage is. And this is actually what I do with my one-on-one clients every single week. We review, they have like a client roadmap where I review their scores, and they get this kind of consistency score with their steps, their calories, and their protein. And then they have a separate consistency score of how many workouts they did compared to how many they had planned. So every week they're able to see, I was 90% consistent this week. I was 90% consistent this week with this, or maybe I was only 25% consistent this week. And, things might feel hard, but if that consistency level isn't there and that threshold isn't met, then we can't beat science, right? The work we put in, the things we do have to meet a certain threshold for physiologically, for our body to change in a certain way. Whether it feels hard or it feels easy, that threshold needs to be met. So don't let some periods of it feeling hard with not seeing results stop you, because you might just have to keep going so you get that threshold of consistency you need. But if you're not paying attention to those variables I mentioned, calories, protein, steps, workouts, and not making the right adjustments, you might just be doing the wrong things. But hopefully this was helpful and eye-opening. Appreciate you all, and I will see you guys in the next one.